Let's join now the retired General Sir Richard Barrons, former commander of the UK's Joint Forces Command. How seriously should this be taken then? You obviously heard from our security and defence editor there.
Yes, and I absolutely agree with Deborah Haynes that right now is the time for cool heads and the facts. And the facts will be established probably in daylight when the parts of whatever caused this explosion, such as bits of a missile, will be located, and they're relatively easy to identify. And the radar tracks through the sky at the time of the explosion can also be investigated, because the stakes are really high. That if, and it would be extraordinary, Russia had decided to fire a missile into NATO territory, and we should recognize that it's probably unlikely Russia would choose to target a random grain silo in a village with a population of just 400 to start a war with NATO. But if Russia has decided to do that, then this world of ours is taking a turn that no one could possibly have imagined even a month ago. Far more likely is an explanation that a missile has gone rogue. In other words, it's malfunctioned or it's been deflected and ended up in Poland with tragic consequences. So exactly as your correspondent has described, you need to know what happened, what the intent was behind it, and then people should take a view on it. And I think a sort of international junior school football match whirring up the rhetoric around this right now is deeply unhelpful.
Yes, and I guess there are actually four possible explanations if indeed this was related to the Ukraine war. One, as you said, it was deliberate but unlikely. Another is a missile overshoot or gone wrong. The other is that air defence systems had been deployed and this was a remnant part of a missile, or indeed part of the interceptor itself. We know that Ukraine received NASAMs from America. They've got their own S-300s, Ukraine's existing Soviet-era air defence systems. So there are a number of explanations for this. So what does happen now, and how closely will NATO allies consult, do you think? Because this process of verifying what happened is already underway, as far as we understand it.
So all eyes will now be on the site of the explosion, and people, experts in the technology, will be looking for missile debris and other debris to identify what it was that has killed these two poor souls this evening. And then when they've identified what it was, they can then start to investigate how it got there and maybe what the motive was behind it. And really only when that is clearer, and clear in my view, should the North Atlantic Council and NATO members take a definitive position on this, because to do so beforehand would imply they were prepared to decide on something really significant in the absence of actually knowing the facts. And the other point about this evening is there's this huge attention on this explosion in Poland for very, very good reasons. But the fact is, during the course of today, Russia has fired at least 90 missiles, cruise and ballistic missiles, into Ukraine. That's about $500 million worth of missiles. It's done a lot of damage, not to the military of Ukraine, but to the domestic electricity infrastructure, and that in itself must be clearly a more shocking event than one explosion in a field in Poland.
Well, absolutely. Let's talk about that and the energy crisis now in Ukraine and indeed in its neighbours. Moldova reporting power outages. The Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban convening a meeting of his Defence Council after crude shipments on a pipeline were suspended. The whole of the Kharkiv region, we're told, is without power, 80% of Lviv, and so on. What is the strategy from Russia in order to damage that crucial infrastructure as we head into winter in Ukraine?
So there appear to be three parts to the Russian strategy right now. One is to do better on the battlefield, and the withdrawal from Kherson earlier this week made military sense, but was a huge strategic and indeed military setback. So there's a war on the battlefield for territory, and it's frankly not moving very much right now either way. There's a second aspect to the war in Ukraine, which is the war against the will of the Ukrainian people to continue in this fight, and Russia is trying to do that by depriving them of heat and light and energy to go to work and go to school. And then there's a third dimension, which is try to deplete the will of Western nations, including the UK, to support Ukraine by targeting our cost of living and our energy supplies. And all of this can be connected in a campaign by Russia to continue to fight this war, frankly, with all the means at its disposal, military and non-military, short of weapons of mass destruction, at least so far.